Hey, good morning, Drive Time. Welcome back. I'm your host, David Drum. And as always, here on Drive Time, what we're really trying to do is get you 1% better each week. With me this week is Billy LoPresti, who is a nurse at Sarasota Memorial Hospital here in Sarasota, Florida. Billy, welcome to Drive Time.
Thanks, David. Happy to be here, man. It's a pleasure and a blessing.
Okay. So, again, being that what we try to do here is really try to illuminate a way for us to improve each week with something tangible, a takeaway that we get to talk about at the end and a way to move into our week. But some of our tangibles are a little more conceptual than others. And I sometimes kind of spring it on you guys at the last minute or as we're wrapping up. I want you to hear Billy's story and know what we're talking about, because what we're talking about through the course of our discussion today is less about the actual events and more about a posture, and it's a posture of faithfulness. And we've talked about that before here on Drive Time. But Billy, your career starts in the ER and you're back in the ER, but it kind of, your path is taking you around the hospital, literally, and back in a different position. But in a sense, outside of your nursing career, you're doing the same thing, but the results have become very different. So if you would talk us through this story of where all this begins for you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so I started my nursing career 9 years ago. I'm an RN. I am originally from Ohio and moved down here and immediately got a job at Sarasota Memorial Hospital in the ER. And it was my first experience in the ER. I found out pretty quickly it's a pretty harsh environment, pretty rough place, as you could probably imagine. I was working there for a year or so, and my wife and I were going to a church here in town, and I was raised Catholic, but this was a Protestant church, and I grew up believing in God, but never really read the Bible for myself, never really dug into the details of God or sort of sought after Him specifically. And we were going to this church, and I was alone in our living room one night reading the New Testament, crying out to God for Him to reveal Himself if He was who He says He was, and He did so. I got hit pretty powerfully, felt like electricity through my body, just knew that God was real in that moment, and I cried out, Jesus, you're real, and gave my life to Jesus, following Jesus in that moment. And so I've been working in the ER for about a year. And when I went back to work after that, people kind of started noticing, I think, a change in me, but I really started to open up and share my faith, started to share what I found. And that was met with a lot of ridicule and a lot of negativity. And so I felt called to ministry from that time on, but really wanted that ministry to be in a church because I loved being at church. I loved the joy that I felt in that atmosphere, that spirit-filled atmosphere and around the family of believers. And I thought, all right, I'm called to ministry. This is where you minister, at a church. And what became more clear was God calling me to minister where I was, which was at work in the ER. And that was about the last place I wanted to be ministering. I wanted to get out of there almost immediately. It was just so negative and harsh to witness. And really, I felt like I was on an island, like I was alone. But through that, I was crying out for God to use me, praying for Him to use me any way He saw fit. And He spoke very clearly that I was to start a Bible study in the ER, which, again, was not at the top of my places to start a Bible study. I've been helping lead the men's ministry at our church. I started a Bible study, and that was going well with believers. But to start a Bible study or introduce one in the ER was terrifying. But at the same time, I felt just joy about knowing that the Lord wanted to use me. And so I put together a plan. I wrote in my journal about how I was going to roll this out. And what I came up with was that the hospital, the ER specifically, was really missing a few things. I felt they were missing compassion, professionalism, and accountability. And so I went to my then director of the ER and I said, hey, I think the ER is missing these things and I think I have a solution. So I pitched the idea of starting a group that would try to kind of bring in some compassion, accountability, and professionalism to the ER. And in that conversation, I didn't plan for it, but the Spirit moved, and I shared with her that I was a Christian and that I had started a men's Bible study outside of the ER, and I think that I wanted to bring something like that to the ER. And she was okay with it. She was good with me bringing that to the ER.
So let me jump in here with you for a minute, because I find it interesting that your initial pitch was not that, hey, I want to spread the gospel. I want you to give me this space so that I can do my thing. Your initial pitch was, hey, let me help you. Let me add value to this space. I'm sensing there's this lack of, you say compassion and professionalism, in the ER, and those are valuable to you. Here, I have an idea of how I can help you with that. And I think sometimes as Christians, we want to be like, no, I'm here for Jesus. It's like, actually, you can step in and serve non-Christians around you. And when they see like, hey, these are our values already, this is what we believe. Like, we want to treat people well. We want to help someone out. So you actually went into this, at least from their mindset of like, hey, let me help you improve what you want. But while I'm at it, there's some other stuff I want to talk about.
Yeah. So I think that one of my goals now, looking back in hindsight and moving forward, is to bring the kingdom of heaven here to earth. And I think that's my focus in the marketplace. I think that's why God called me to ministry in the marketplace, is we don't have to start off by beating someone over the head with the Bible or getting in their space in an uncomfortable way for them. We can show them the joy and the peace that we have in a way that's familiar to them, kind of speak language that's familiar to them while still being Spirit-led. So I went into it knowing that it would help the ER. It would benefit everybody around if we could incorporate some of these principles, some of these things that we saw. And she naturally saw that and agreed. And then I was able to, let her know what that source was. And I think that's the thing that I think what was terrifying for me was that initial step of even approaching her with it. Once I got past that, I think what we miss sometimes when we're trying to lead from a place of faith anyway is giving credit to, this is the source of these ideas that I have. It's not from me. It's because I follow Jesus. I follow those principles. It's what he's laid out for me. I'm just following the master.
So now you fast forward and you have been given permission to host this massive Bible study. And by massive, what I mean is they more or less tolerated it versus really even allowing it. They tolerate it and let you set up before your shift at 5 a.m. In a break room.
Yeah. So I knew the only way to get any healthcare staff there was to do it either right before the shift or right after. So I was day shift. So we started meeting at 5:30, I think it was, and before shift. And so it was massive. We had at least 2 or 3 people that would show up regularly. But I mean, it was a blessing for everybody that came. When they would show up, we really saw some breakthrough, work through some marriage things with some people and different things, and always ended in prayer and just set that tone. cool thing is, although not a lot of people were coming to the Bible study, I had a pastor from a Baptist church tell me this after the fact. I was sharing my story with him, and he said, "Oh, it was the lighthouse effect." So what happened was just my coworkers knowing about my faith and seeing my conviction. Anytime they had something going on in their life or a rough day at work, they came and found me and asked for prayer. These were not people that had faith of any kind. But anytime something went wrong, as he said, it was like a lighthouse effect. They saw that joy. They knew who had faith. They knew who had conviction. They knew who would intercede. So we saw that fruit coming from this little teeny tiny Bible study.
So, and then from that, you know, like you said, you get this reputation. People know you as this Christian guy, and not just superficially that you're a man of conviction, of faith, that doesn't waver when it's uncomfortable. And as your career progresses, you continue to be that guy. You then move throughout the hospital in a different role, but continue to witness, continue to be known as that guy. And then as I guess you could say luck would have it, or as divine intervention would have it, you end up back in the ER as the ER manager, overseeing, you said it's 200 and some odd employees. And this time that Bible study isn't there when you show up, but your reputation is. So tell us about that part.
Yeah. Yep. So left the ER, got a promotion that involved me leaving the ER, and I thought I was done there. I thought the Lord had moved me into a different position. I was elsewhere in the hospital. And then sure enough, not long after that, I got another promotion to a different position. And then not long after that, got put back in the ER. So the Lord led me right back to the place where I tried to get promoted initially. I tried to move up the ranks in the ER initially, but it wasn't happening. And so went outside, and sure enough, as he would have it, I got promoted above the level I was going for initially in the ER. So I'm back in the ER in the role of manager. Maybe a couple months after I was in that role, I had a couple other managers from different departments come up to me. And one of them I'd never spoken to before. And she had something she wanted to talk to about business. And so we talked about that. And as I was leaving her office, she said, "Hey, could you start a Bible study? I think we could really use that here." And I said, "Well, you're the second manager that's asked me to do that, so I know the Lord's speaking." So it wasn't so scary this time because I've been down this path before. So I put together an email, sent it out to the whole managers group throughout the hospital, invited all the leaders to join in Bible study, and we were going to study the life of Jesus Christ. And this time the response was very different. I had the chaplain, the head chaplain, a couple other folks that I knew were believers kind of support, and they jumped on board right away. And so whereas before I was told that I couldn't, I could start a Bible study in the ER, they tolerated it, but I couldn't use conference rooms in the ER. I believe it or not, I couldn't use the chapel. There were different stipulations that I had to do to be compliant with corporate. This time, the head chaplain was aware of it, fully on board, and he talked to the head of spiritual services at the hospital, and she was able to book the hardest conference room to book in that place. It's huge, and she booked it for 1 hour every Tuesday for the rest of the year for us to meet and have our Bible studies. So, pretty amazing.
That's incredible. So now, and that's the thing, I think as guys, a lot of times, like, we want the story to start there. But it didn't. Oh, yeah. You know, that's the cool part of the story. Like, oh man, I sent out an email, I got great feedback. You know, I get the biggest, conference room, but it started on your own time in a little corner of a break room with, like you said, 2 or 3 other people that you were still able to help, that God still showed up and walked in their lives and made changes in their lives. But sometimes we get caught up and we want those big mountaintop moments, but we don't do the work to get there. So Amen. Let me ask you this. What's the time frame from conference room, or I should say from break room to conference room? How many years are we talking?
That would have been 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
4 years of remaining faithful to what God put on your heart to minister to a community that, you said like, hey, I want out of here. I want to go do this at a church. I want to go be, I want to fish in a barrel kind of thing. I want the people to come to me to be ministered.
Yeah.
But that's not really the case for a lot of us. A lot of us are still out in professions, but we're all still called to ministry. We're all still called to illuminate the gospel in our lives and let God be present in our lives for the purpose of showing other people his goodness. And it started, I still think it's really cool that you started with, hey, I think we could use these traits in our ER. It still started with not, hey, I want to, lead a spiritual charge and renewal in this environment. It's, hey, let me help you with this thing that we're lacking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we need to be sensitive to the Spirit. As first of all, that's a skill I think that we get as believers. Is we're just we're in touch with the Spirit. I think one thing that is really hard for us is to implement or be obedient. So I have 3 words that I just kind of try to live by as best I can. It's faith, humility, and discipline. And God, we can't please God without faith. If we remain humble, I believe that's the path to the mountaintops, and it takes discipline to do all that. So I try to hear from the Lord as much as possible. And when I hear that call, I try to remain faithful and follow him. And as you said before, David, the fruit follows that faithfulness. And yeah, I picture the Israelites leaving Egypt, and how what should have been an 11-day journey took them 40 years. And, they were going through those battles. And of course, it led to the promised land. So I think we as believers need to be out in the marketplace, realize that this isn't just an 11-day journey, and remain faithful to what the Lord's calling us to do. It's not easy. The implementation is the hard part.
Yeah. Well, and so let me ask you this as we're wrapping up. Is there something you think that we can pass on to the guys who are watching this week, whether it be an encouragement, and because again, we usually try to do very tangible steps, but staying faithful is not a singular step. It is, like we talked about before, and guys, you may remember this quote from Scott Arbeiter from one of last year's episodes, but, faithfulness is our gift to God that we give to him daily, and fruitfulness is his gift to us and his timing. But it does require us to remain faithful. So from that standpoint, today's step is to remain faithful, but so is tomorrow's, and Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays and so on. So is there some encouragement you can give, outside of your story even, to just encourage the guys to remain faithful where they've been planted?
Yeah, I think I don't know if this will sound very pragmatic, but I hope it does. I really, truly felt called to ministry. I want to minister to people, and I viewed that as meaning I needed to work in a church. And I think there's probably a lot of young guys that have ambition and have leadership in their spirit. And they feel called to share Jesus and see people saved and see heaven full. And that's where my heart is. The one thing that I would say is you don't necessarily have to work in a church. You bring the kingdom of heaven to earth wherever you're planted. And it is in the hardest places like ERs or sheriff's offices or the marketplace, where you don't have to be, You just need to be available to be used in those places. Be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. I mean, really be sensitive to what is this person in front of me needing right now? How can I show them love? I've prayed over a lot of people, and the one thing I always walk away with, whether I feel like nothing happened or the Spirit broke out and hit them powerfully, is if they know that I love them, then they experience Jesus. If they know that I'm a stranger, not only was I willing to pray for them in the moment, and that's one big thing is a lot of times we'll say, hey, sorry you just got diagnosed with cancer, I'll be praying for you, or sorry that your marriage is rough, I'll be praying for you. We need to turn that into, I'll pray right now, in the moment, lay hands on people, pray for them. Your workplace is your ministry. That's where we need it most, is the marketplace. That those passionate young leaders, or old, there's no age, but those passionate leaders who are on fire for God, want to see the kingdom of God come to earth and lead in a powerful way. I truly believe the only reason, and I shared this with one of the directors that I worked for in the hospital. She's not a believer. She called me in the office and said, hey, do you think that your faith has anything to do with all these promotions you got in work? And I said, that is the only reason I've been promoted. I said, is Jesus Christ is setting the example for me. And I don't view my work as just work. I view it as ministry. I'm serving our community, but more importantly, I want to see people enter into the kingdom of heaven. So, I mean, I don't know, like I said, how pragmatic that is, but lead with the mindset that we're in this for the eternal glory, not just what we see here on earth.
That's good. That is actually, I can't think of a better way to end our time together this morning. So, Billy, I just want to say thank you for spending some time with us this morning, just to give us not only your story, but just that glimpse of the fruit that can come out of years of faithful ministering to those around you. So, hey, thank you again for your time.
It's my pleasure. God bless you, brother.
All right, gentlemen, we'll see you again right here next week on Drivetime.